Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the launch of Story Night's 10th anniversary flagship season, The Decades. Woohoo! And 10 years, how amazing. For those of you dressed in 70s garb, welcome, especially to you. Quick story, I'm Frankie Barnhill. I'm the senior producer on Idaho Matters at Boise State Public Radio. And I didn't have any 70s clothes. I have like 90s clothes, 80s. So I sent out an email to some folks and the interns came to my rescue. These are definitely like Gen Z folks who have lots of 70s clothes, so I feel pretty happy about that. Boise State Public Radio is a proud sponsor of Story Night. We are member supported. I also happen to be a board member of Story Night. We're a scrappy little nonprofit, and I'm here to introduce the host and artistic director of Story Night, Jody Eichelberger.
Good evening. All right, cool beans. All right, first I have to acknowledge our DJ, Jared Manimal Bostrom. He comes to us from another Story Night partner this year, Radio Boise, where he has his show, Event Horizon Boogie, on Thursday evenings. And it starts after my bedtime. But that's a fun show to tune into on Thursday nights. And he'll be spinning some 70s boogie music for us during the show tonight. And I also want to welcome back our season sponsor. Please help me in thanking them, the Pettit Group Realty. And you'll hear more about them a little later in the show. So, structure of the show. We will have 3 featured storytellers intermixed with a community story slam. And what that means is all of you in the audience here can visit this booth right over here at any time, write your name on a little ticket, drop it in, and if you're drawn during the show, you get to tell a 5-minute story on the theme 70s. And there are also some other fun little things that we don't talk about too much, but do happen with the Slammers. One is, we just finished a couple months ago the Slammer of the Year show up at the train depot, where we set the show up on the railroad tracks. And these are the shows we pull a storyteller from all year long, and they all come back together in September to share a new story on a theme. So that's how that happens, by telling a story here tonight. The other thing that can happen to you only at the flagship shows is in April at our birthday show, you might be chosen by Lita Harris Newstetter to have your 5-minute story slam transformed into a mini musical. And this is the 4th year she'll be doing that, and we've seen some great ones about all different topics. And actually, one of our featured storytellers was in one of those mini musicals a couple years ago. And so those are some fun things to do. But mostly, we need you to put your name in, because if we don't have any names in there, that makes the show a little strange. So you're welcome to go up there anytime. Maybe I'll give you some ideas. So yes, it is hard to believe this is the 10th anniversary season of Story Night. Yes, thank you to all of you that were involved. It started in the first show we actually just broadcast on Radio Boise came from the Sunray Cafe in the North End, and then it began at the Linen Building. Some of you were there, I think, and then moved on to the Rose Room, and then from there to El Cora, and now at Jump. I think this is our start of our 4th season here at Jump. So that's exciting, 10 years, and that gave us the idea that maybe we would do themes for each of the shows this year based on a decade to celebrate our decade. We were going to start with the 60s, but nobody could remember them, so we went ahead and said, let's go with the 70s. We have a little more hope with that, maybe. I actually am a child of the 70s, so we are in a little bit of danger of the season becoming a bit of a biopic. But I am also look, watching my younger sister raise her little girls. She has a 4-year-old and a soon-to-be 2-year-old, and I'm kind of amazed that I made it. Seeing what child rearing is and what's involved today, and the things people know about raising kids today that apparently were not known when I was growing up. I particularly remember, and my mom, I think, is here tonight too, so this, I don't know whether to point her out before the stories or after the stories. But hey, I'm here, so everything went okay, right? I do remember, though, and this would have been early 70s, driving down Fairview Avenue in a blue Volkswagen Bug. And I was tiny. I was like, I don't know, 4 years old, 3 years old, I don't know. Sitting in the front seat, no seatbelt, no car seat. And my grandma lived in a little trailer on the south side of Fairview, east of Maple Grove. And as we came up to that, I got pretty excited, like, oh, grandma's house. And so I just opened the door while we're driving down Fairview. And I, was like, eek! Still the pavement going pretty fast underneath me. But now that I think about it, maybe we were safer then, because I just had to take my car in twice for a recall for airbags, which apparently were shooting shrapnel at people. And I can tell you something even faster we had then than the airbag was the mom arm. Super fast. Stop you from running into the dashboard, going through the windshield, and had the added advantage of being able to grab a small child before they fell out the door, which I don't think airbags can do. So in addition to that, I remember, must have been, well, I don't want to shock people, but discipline was also a little different then. And I was spanked, okay? Yeah, right. We had no timeouts or contemplation corners. Did not have those. However, what we did have, at least my mom had, is a wooden spoon with a hole in the middle. And my dad had a razor strap. Gosh, that sounds awful, doesn't it? Whew. So this must have been about 1976. My entire family had white afros. And just to clarify, what I mean by that is that my family is white, and they all had afros, including my 2-year-old sister, who they put in the kitchen sink and chemically altered her hair in order to give it that certain look. And the whole house smelled of ammonia. I mean, it was intense. And it also had something to do with what used to be my most embarrassing moment. Not because I was embarrassed of my mom's big, beautiful hair, but because actually I wanted one too, and they never gave me one for some reason. So I was still pretty young. I was old enough to take a shower, but wasn't really good at grooming or whatever. And so I came out of the shower, and Mom helped to dry me off, and she was clipping my toenails, and I was just standing there, clip, 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 thinking. And it was one of the first times I remember being aware of being naked. Like, something about having her down there clipping my toenails, and just, I'm really naked right now. I'm down there, I'm naked. And I started thinking, in Sunday school we learned about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and how they were naked. But they did something wrong. I'm not sure I quite knew what that was. And God punished them, but he didn't have a wooden spoon or a razor strap. So he punished them by making them wear clothes. And so I was thinking about this, and I asked my mom, clip, 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 if Adam and Eve hadn't been bad, would we still be naked today? And she thought about it for a little bit, and then said, yes, I guess we would be. And I thought about that. I thought about my principal naked, and the kids at school naked, and the gas attendant naked, and I started laughing, and I laughed, and I laughed, and I laughed, and then I started to pee. A golden arc landing into my mom's big, beautiful white afro and streaming down into her eyes. If her eyes weren't stinging so badly, maybe the world would look a little bit like it does through these glasses right now. She started screaming. I started screaming. I ran upstairs. I thought that I had blinded my mother. But we both survived, and we're both here tonight. Mom, if you're not too embarrassed, go ahead and stand up. There she is. I see she's wearing a protective hair covering this evening. Don't worry, I'm older now and my prostate is not as strong. Okay. We have other people who survived the 70s here tonight. Now, that story was set in the 70s, and all of our featured storytellers are set in the 70s as well. And they have another thing that's interesting about them is that at least two of them are in their 70s. And I'll let you decide who's who. But one of the things that's fun that we appreciate is when people are a little creative and maybe they think of another way to link to the theme 70s. So maybe you have a story that you lost 70 pounds, or you jumped from a cliff that was 70 feet high, or you ate 70 hot dogs, or just 70 Oreos while you were watching Netflix. Not sure how you're going to turn that into a 5-minute story, but you can tell us about each cookie, I guess. I'm interested to hear how you connect to this theme. It is super fun to have these speakers that we have tonight, though. We're going to kind of start with a wide picture and narrow in closer and closer. So I'm going to welcome our 3 featured storytellers up in reverse order tonight. Our first storyteller, that would be third storyteller. The third storyteller tonight is a man who was here in the 70s during the formation of the Idaho Shakespeare Festival, which was founded in the late 70s. And that is, of course, Mr. Stitch Marker. Yeah, come on up. Hey. Hi. Ooh, look at this shirt. Nice.
It's 70s.
Very. Our second storyteller, he would be the second storyteller no matter which order I'm going in, so I'm safe with that one. This is a man who traveled the state of Idaho in the 70s, visiting small rural towns, and he did it again recently, and his name is Alan Minskoff. But our first storyteller, who is going to be coming to the mic here directly, is a woman who in the 70s didn't feel, well, she had 2 feelings at least. One of them was not feeling wanted enough, and the other was feeling too wanted. Please welcome to the stage our first featured storyteller, Susan Valakat.
Thanks, Jody. And thank you to anybody out there who's thinking I'm not one of the ones that's 70. My story takes place during the summer of 1974. My husband and I lived in a small little town towards the tip of Cape Cod, and we had a pretty contentious relationship. We decided to take a trip cross country to see if we might make that relationship work. I had the bright idea that if we lived in a tent for 6 months, that everything would be great and we would reconnect with each other. I know all of you would think, yeah, that's what you want to do if you're having trouble with your relationship. So the trip across the Midwest was interesting in a boring sort of way. Luckily, we had a bunch of weed that had been given to us as going away gifts from our friends. It made the trip so much more fun. We were trying to stay off the highway, the freeways, and just stay on the back road so we could experience the countryside. Now, I want to tell you that my husband was born and raised in New York City, so he never needed to drive, so he never learned. He was 6'3", had long red hair that hung below his shoulders, and a big red beard. He loved his hair. I had long dark hair, wore granny glasses, lots of India print clothes, bangles on my arms, and always big hoop earrings. You get the picture. Needless to say, a lot of those small towns, those farming communities, didn't welcome us with open arms. In fact, we got a lot of odd looks, and a couple of times were asked to leave. At that time, you would often see in restaurant windows, no hippies allowed. So we got the message, and we traveled as quickly as we could across Nebraska, heading towards the Black Hills in South Dakota. We had been reading Buried My Heart at Wounded Knee and thought it would be interesting to visit some of those areas. So we ended up on the Rosebud Indian Reservation, which is part of the Sioux Nation. It was my first time on a reservation, and I was pretty shaken by the poverty there, and I felt like we didn't belong. My husband, on the other hand, I guess because he thought he could pass as Indian, that everything was going to be cool. So we headed on to the campground, which was in the center of the reservation, and I was quite surprised when we got there. There was a beautiful stream flowing through it, trees, grass, and a large hill or a small mountain that cast shade all over the campground. And I couldn't understand why people weren't living here rather than the barren land that they were on. So first things first, we got stoned and hiked up that hill to see what we could see. I have no idea how long we were up there, as it was sometime in the afternoon when we started, and the sun was starting to set when we were starting back down. Because we were up so high, in both senses of the word, we could see the whole valley. And off in the distance, there were a line of cars heading our way. My first thought was, crap, we're going to have to share the campground with somebody. You know, being all hippie and stuff. But as I got closer, I realized that these were not campers. These were all the same kind of cars, big and black, moving at a very fast rate of speed, very close together, and their windows were all rolled up. So we hid behind some bushes to see what we could see. We wanted to see what was going to play out down there. Sure enough, they pulled in and blocked our car in. And at the same moment, all their doors opened, and these very large men in black suits got out. Now, having had spent the late 60s in the San Francisco area and Los Angeles and attended a lot of demonstrations and even been arrested a couple of times, this said one thing to me: FBI. So, have I mentioned that my husband's a bit of a narcissist? He didn't think anything bad would ever happen to him. The world really centered around him. Meanwhile, down there at the bottom, it was apparent these guys were not going to leave till we came down, as they all had binoculars scanning the hillside for us. So it was like, okay, we could go over the hill behind us, but to where? Or we could go down and face the music, so that's what we had to do. As we got closer, I realized it wasn't the FBI, but the BIA, which is the Bureau of Indian Affairs, but for reservations. My husband says, "Oh, cool, they're Indians, no problem." I guess he felt because he had long hair and had read a couple of books about their culture, they would accept him as one of their own. I was not feeling that. So we continued down, and when we got down there, I was saying, let's just play it cool, like we're just a couple of stoner campers, which we were, and just see what they want. Maybe they want nothing. So when we get down, I was quite surprised to find out that I was the object of their interest. They slammed me up against the car and put handcuffs on me and put me in the back seat of one of their cars. Now, I knew enough from previous experiences not to open my mouth. I was hoping my husband wouldn't open his either, but no telling. So as I sat there, they had been going through our car. Oh, I forgot to tell you this. Remember, we're talking the 70s, so. We kept our weed folded up in our tent, in our back seat with our dog sleeping on it. So that's important for this number. So anyway, they hadn't taken the tent out of the car, so I thought, well, they hadn't found the weed. And, oh, did I mention that we also had some acid in the glove compartment? I was really hoping that they wouldn't find that. So after a few minutes of them doing whatever they were doing, it seemed apparent they didn't find anything of interest. So I thought they'd just let me go and they'd go on their way. Well, that's not what happened. They all got in the car and didn't let me out. I was trying to make eye contact with my husband to just sort of touch base, like, are you worried about me? But so he's standing there like with his arms crossed, staring at our car, and I realized he's not thinking about me. He's more worried about that weed. So as the cars pulled away, I'm wondering how I'm going to find him again. And then next thought is, do I really want to find him again? So we go for quite a ways, and we come to this tiny little town, and they took me into this very small little post office. I thought, this is weird. But when we get in there, I realized that it doubles as a jail. So this whole time, no one is talking to me. So I had no idea what's going on. They fingerprinted me and took my picture. So, and this was all a major buzzkill, by the way. So they put me in what I could only imagine was a closet when it wasn't being used as a cell. So I had some time to think while I was in there, and I'm trying to remember, could there be a warrant out for me for my days in California? I didn't think so, but that was the 60s, and I was there, so I don't really remember a lot of it. Throughout the night, different agents would come in and ask me my name. It was confusing because they had my driver's license and my car registration with my name on it, and I assumed when they got my fingerprints back, they would have my name on it. So the confusion just lasted all night for me. At one point, one of them came in and asked me if I knew Patty Hearst. So I was like, did she get caught? Because she had been on the run with the SLA, which I also forgot to mention. Sorry. No answer. And then they started talking to me as if I was friends with her, like I should know personal things about her. It was just so confusing. And at some point during the morning, an agent came in and opened the door, and he said, "You're free to go." So now I'm sort of pissed, because it's like, what's up? So I'm sort of yelling at him that he didn't have any right to hold me without charging me, or at least without telling me what this was about. Well, apparently he could do whatever he wanted to do. What I got from him was a very scary stink eye that was basically telling me to shut my mouth. At that point, another agent came in and said, "Nah, not Patty Hearst." So now I realize, they think I'm Patty Hearst. Now I'm standing at the post office window, which is really right next to the jail window, and the post office guy, he's laughing, and I said, "Did they really think I was Patty Hearst?" And he thought it was really funny. He said, "Yeah, they thought they had captured the most wanted criminal in America, and they were waiting all night long for your fingerprints to come back, and had the FBI on standby to swoosh in and get you once you were identified. So now they're pissed off because you're just you, and they look like fools in the eyes of the FBI." So now I'm thinking it's sort of funny. I mean, I was okay. They didn't hurt me or anything, so I was sort of laughing and gathering my things, getting ready to go out. And I'm heading towards the door. I see a Most Wanted poster with Patty Hearst's picture on it and the couple that she was supposedly traveling with. So I thought I needed that poster. And I deserved it. Don't you all think I deserved that poster? So I was going to pull it down and just leave. And I didn't even get my hand up when I got slammed in the back into the door. One of the agents is yelling at me that it's federal property, and it's a federal offense to take it, and did I want to end up back in that closet? Well, no, I did not. So, but I thought I'd try one more thing. So I said, "But wait a second, aren't reservations sovereign? What do you care? Just get another one from the FBI." Well, it's not a good idea to argue with cops of any sort, because they don't really like that too much. So I finally just realized I needed to shut up and get out. So I slunk out the door. Now on the street, and I'm wondering how I'm going to find my asshole husband. I saw him sitting cross-legged under a tree down the street in all of his stoned glory. Apparently someone had gone out because remember, he doesn't drive. So somebody had gone out and driven him into town with my car, my dog, the weed, and the acid, and there he was. I had a fantasy for a second of going back inside, telling the BIA agent that he had drugs in the car, just so they'd arrest him, so I wouldn't have to deal with him. I immediately realized, bad idea, the car's in my name. So he didn't even get up to come to me. I had to walk to him. So I go over thinking, oh, great. And he looks up at me and he says, "Hey man, at least they didn't find the weed." So that morning, with an assist from Patty Hearst, I realized that the crack that had been in our relationship was actually a chasm, and 6 months in a tent was not going to fix anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Now we know here at Story Night how much you really would like to have that wanted poster with Patty Hearst on it. So we did an extensive search across the country, and we pooled our funds together, and we did not get that wanted poster. So instead, what we have for you is the Decades Story Night poster for our 2020 season. You know, another thing that we don't really have anymore that we had in the 70s were slides. You know, photos, slides. Isn't that what you call them? Slides? And they're now frozen in time because we're not adding any more slides to them. But occasionally we'll watch our slides, and I don't know, 60 or 70 of them, I think, are of Hearst Castle in California. And I don't remember ever being there, but I can tell you everything about each of those rooms. We're going to go into a new room now. Do we have a slammer ticket in our slammer box? No slammers. Oh my goodness. What's that? I would think there would be too. Well, we've done this once before where somebody kind of didn't do the process of dropping their name in and just felt the courage well up within them and started heading toward the stage. So I'm going to give us a moment to contemplate the rainbow lights. Oh, here he comes. Okay. Hello, sir. Good. Now, I just have to review the rules just really quickly while you're...
There's no laws when you're drinking claws.
Oh. Not one of our sponsors. So you have 5 minutes to tell a story on a theme, avoid language and super adult situations. We're a PG-13 show. Oh, you can do it. I know you can. If you happen to be getting short on time, I'm going to be sitting over there, but I'll get up and start trying to hitchhike to Caldwell. All right? And then Jared Manimal Bostrom will start playing a little tune underneath, and you'll sense that your time has come. All right, here we go. What's your name?
Bill.
Bill. I didn't get to announce his name because I have no ticket. I'm in a new territory here. Bill.
You know what? I don't have a ticket either, so it's just good to be here.
All right.
All right, first of all, everybody's looking at me going, how the hell does this guy even know what the 70s were? I assure you I do. Second of all, native Idahoans, no bottles, no cans. This is a story about me growing up in California. It was the 70s, man. It was okay. Idaho wasn't even a state. So anyway, here I am, child of the 70s, maybe 80s. Maybe I'm a child of the 80s, but I do remember the 70s vaguely. I was in California. I was in Northern California. Oh, God, where do I even start so many stories? So these stories are going to be a compilation of my experience, if anybody's been there, the Bay Area, Oakland, Alameda County Coliseum. Bill Graham presents The Day on the Green. Right? Thank you, my brothers and sisters. So, if you haven't experienced it, general admission in the 70s, going back to the way we were raised, in the 70s, concerts had this crazy thing, general admission. You didn't get a seat. You were lucky to get a ticket, and then you camped out. It was like, it was camping, concert. It was all combined. It was all love, man. And we would camp out in the Oakland, Alameda County Coliseum. The place seated 50,000, 60,000 for a day on the green. And we're all camped out along a fence line in Oakland, California. What could go wrong? A bunch of kids smoking weed, camping on a fence line. We got our tents, we got our sleeping bags, we got our booze. And I was old enough for none of that. But I was in California and I was a kid, and it was the 70s, so it was all good. 1977 comes along, and Bill Graham presents Led Zeppelin. Well, fuck, I gotta go. Fudge, I gotta go. I warned you. Fudge, I gotta go. So my sister, me, a bunch of kids in the neighborhood, off we go. So here we are camping out. We show up the day prior, 8 a.m. It's 8 a.m. the day before the concert, and we're hundreds of people deep in this line. Throw up our tents, get everything going. We're all hanging out, having a great time. out comes the weed, out comes the booze, everybody's having a great time. The cops, it's the 70s. Apparently the cops at the BIA, they're different than the cops in Oakland. The cops in Oakland were like, yeah, peace, love, go ahead. Just, don't hurt anybody. It's all good. So that's what we did all night. But then come morning, at some point, it was almost like a starter pistol went off. And everybody started getting antsy, like the cat pawing on something, the lion stretching. It's like, okay, something's about to go down. This was my first day on the green. I had no clue what was about to go down. But this was it. They opened gates to a parking lot, a huge parking lot. And I swear, if you've ever seen a documentary of wildebeest on the savannah, that was this. These gates open up. All of these people have neatly tucked away their stuff against this fence line. Is it really still going to be there when we get back? No, it wasn't. It was long gone when we got back. Apparently, a lot of bums had some really nice tents and things. But we take off, dead sprint toward the Coliseum. And it is like a wildebeest jaunt. People are falling. People are stumbling. It's like, no, and they just reach back. One guy was running past me like a gazelle, joint in hand, pinky out, just dead sprint, beer over here, didn't lose a toke, didn't lose a drop, and ran past me like the wind. I was just a kid. I didn't have a chance against this type of talent. I didn't even know. Meanwhile, I'm also out there with, the Jerry Garcias of the world. There were guys who were so wasted that they couldn't run. They were just walking. They're like, hey, man, it's all good. And I'm looking at them like, why did you even camp out? You don't have a chance here, brother. You're going to be at the back of the line. You camped for 30 hours to be in the front of the line, and now you're going to be at the back of this line because we have to sprint a mile, and there's no way you're going to make it. I'm waiting for the ambulance to come up and grab Jerry and help him out because, he's not looking good. He's looking a little peaked, and I'm thinking maybe not. But Jerry makes it, I guess. I don't know. I was gone. So we all get to these, guess what's waiting for us? That's right, another gate. Big fence around the Coliseum. Apparently, you get to go into the parking lot at 8 a.m., but then you get to wait until noon for the gates to open. What the hell did I do to myself? I was just a kid. I didn't know. I didn't know. But we wait, and we wait, and we wait. So we all take off at noon. The gates open, and again, it's the wildebeest, only this time it truly is the wildebeest. Now it's the wildebeest going over the cliff, into the river, climbing stairs. It's ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it. We're climbing over each other. I think there was a woman and a small child that I perhaps, just went over in I just had to get to the front. I had to see Robert Plant, man. Come on, let me unbutton my shirt, get all that Robert Plantness going on up here, and you'll know. I had to do it. So we all get out there. Day on the green, if you don't know, it's a Coliseum, it's a baseball field, football field. It's where the Raiders and the Oakland A's still play today. Huge grass. They let you on the grass. The stage is out in center field. Everybody's all over the grass. Everybody's up in the stands. I mean, it's just completely packed. So, the beauty of the day on the greens, probably the reason they don't have them today, is everybody's smoking, everybody's toking, everybody's having a good time. And for the rest of that summer, while you're watching the Oakland A's play baseball, there's 7-leaf cannabis sativa everywhere in the field. Beautiful.
And Bill, also, if you would head over to the booth now and sign our release form. We only make Californians do that, but that's not true. Everybody has to do that. I like how you immediately assumed it was the bums that stole the tents, but I think it was probably people with marital problems. It's the latest counseling trend in the 70s. Tents were scarce. Now, we are all very aware of the fact that Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and many of you are going to be asked what you're thankful for as you're sitting around the table. It's not too hard for us at Story Story Night. I think I'm supposed to say we at Story Story Night. What we're thankful for. You don't last 10 years without a lot of people working really hard and giving a lot of support and time and energy. That profile looks very familiar that's walking along the side there. Is that Amy Moran over at the Story Story booth? How apropos. Amy, come on up here. You're already standing. Come on up here. So, when I joined the board in 2015, there were a couple of other board members that joined around the same time. This is one of them, this beautiful woman, Amy Moran. Hello. She has one of the most recognizable profiles in Boise, Idaho. I can catch her against a wall. So we have these bylaws that exist, and one of the things about the bylaws is it makes our board leave after 4 years, and so now we have board members that are running the end of their term, and there are two right now. One is Hannah Mae. She can't be here tonight because she just had a baby. Excuses. Oh, Hannah, is that you? Or was that the baby? The other is my dear friend here, Amy Moran, who has been the board president for the last couple of terms as well. She handles sponsorships. She is at all the shows, helping in every way she can. She and I met after shows to talk about how it went, what we could do differently. Just so many ways that she supports us and has been supporting us, and actually is even going to continue to support us, just not as an official board member. And Amy's really been a rock for us at Story Story Night, and I'm going to miss you terribly. The best thing we could think of from the board to really commemorate this moment and what you have been to Story Story Night was, of course, to order a pet rock. And this is in the original packaging. I should probably be handling it with white gloves. And I checked, and the rock is doing well. It has little breath holes here so it can breathe. And I believe there's also some documentation that asserts that this is indeed a authentic pet rock. Thank you for your service. Part of what Amy is responsible for is helping with all of our sponsors, our season sponsors and our show sponsors, including gathering our sponsor messages, which I am going to read one to you right now from our season sponsor. Andrea Pettit is passionate about houses and their owners. She has been leading with giving and integrity for 17 years. That's a decade plus 7 years, just to keep with the theme. Striving for the highest possible results for her clients. A Boise native, Andrea proudly supports our local arts community by donating monthly to arts-related nonprofit groups and by gifting clients local art pieces at closing. Thank you, Andrea Pettit, for your support. Not just us, but a lot of other nonprofits in the area, too. All right, that's the end of that page. Amy, you've been a rock in this organization. Given our theme tonight, I cannot think of a better memento. Both Hannah and Amy are continuing to be involved in Story Story. And now a man who is thankful that the plans to clear blocks and blocks of downtown Boise to build a giant enclosed mall in the 70s didn't happen. Not only is he thankful, he was a part of saving historic buildings in downtown. Please welcome our next featured storyteller, Alan Minskoff.
So, everybody close your eyes, just for a moment. Imagine you were a man in his early 70s, sitting in his book-lined office in the warm glow of your computer screen, and on that screen is a video, and you are 30 years old. you are just enjoying this moment to the max. When your 30-year-old daughter walks in and says, open your eyes now, Dad, is that you? You're so young and handsome. At which point I said, why, thank you, Laura. That is me. And in the 1970s, I ran a program called A Future for the Small Town in Idaho for a magazine I did called Idaho Heritage. Some of you may remember it. Thank you, Scott. Idaho Heritage, one day we're sitting in our 13th Street office, and there are several of us, and we're all from different places. And we look at each other and say, well, now we have a magazine, which had started because of the downtown Boise issue. But we don't know a darn thing about the state of Idaho. Now, we were a not-for-profit in all the senses of that word. We had a 501c3, we didn't make any money, but we could write grants. We were competitive grant writers. So we wrote a grant to visit 24 towns over 2 years in Idaho. It began on a winter night in April in Idaho City, where we held our first meeting, and then we traveled from Victor to Bonners Ferry, from New Plymouth to St. Mary's, and many places in between. So I'll share with you a couple of the memories. One of my favorite places, and a place that I just went back to do a book on small towns, is Mackay. Mackay is in the Lost River Range. It is a spectacularly beautiful place. And then, as now, it's under 1,000 people. So we did advanced trips. And on the advanced trip, we would set up a local coordinator. We'd start to read the papers. We'd interview a few people. We'd find out where we're going to meet. And it so happened at Mackay, they had a great T-shirt that said, "Where the hell is Mackay?" So months later, when we were starting our meeting in Mackay, I turned my back, took off my coat, and flashed my "Where the hell is Mackay" T-shirt, and everybody in the room said, "Oh, this is going to be a fun meeting. They have a good sense of humor." Every meeting was different. Every town is unique in Idaho, and the small towns were then, and I would argue now, still the backbone of the place. Two of the towns that I remember most vividly are Shoshone, which then was really prosperous. We're talking 1977 Shoshone. Lots of trains coming through, lots of people employed, not like this year when I went back, or last year, when there are buildings that are empty, and they've even moved the Idaho Transportation Department to where else? Dairy Heaven to Twin Falls. When we had our meeting in Preston, Idaho, a fascinating thing happened. Now, we are with a television station, that's why there's a video, KBGL, which was the station in Pocatello back then. And they have brought a crew, and the meeting starts, and I'm standing there in front and calling on people, and it is a celebration of Preston. It is so beautiful. The mountains are spectacular. The fishing's the best. The hunting's the best. These people make for the best community on earth. Finally, a guy says to me, and you know, this is the purest water in Idaho. So I have a glass of water, and I toast with him. And about 30 seconds after the toast, an elderly lady stands up, and she says, "Can I tell you something opposite from this point of view?" Everybody gets stock still in the room. She said, "My family came across the country with the Mormon pioneers, and I have lived in this town for decades, and I'm of a different faith, and no one has ever invited me to dinner." At which point, you see all the folks in the room's eyes go down. Happily, about 60 seconds later, this is a small town, close-knit, somebody says, "Well, come to my house. Why don't you come to my house?" And it kind of warmed up the room and improved the mood 120%. Of course, what happens with television? The next day, the KBGL guys go out and visit her at her home, and she wants to walk this back. We have gone back to Boise. She's living in Preston, and so it's a kind of a lesson in human relations. So now she's not going to forget that she's got to be there the next day. Of the towns that we went to, some were so unforgettable because they have changed so much in the 4 decades since I was there first. Rathdrum had under 1,000 people. It's now really close to 10,000. The only thing that's the same in Rathdrum is the trains roll through every 2 minutes. Bellevue, I'm sure many of you know it, back in the 70s was under 1,000. It's now probably closer to 3, and it has expanded. It is much wider. Some of the other towns that were dramatic, because I need to go back to Mackay for a second. So I went back to Mackey, and this is my sort of small town anthem. I drive in, I pull up at the gas station, I have a meeting with a guy named McElvey. Now, Mackey is tiny. I could have probably found his office, but I don't want to wander around. So I asked the lady at the cash register, I said, do you know a guy named Bill McKelvey, I think? She says, oh, yeah, Bill, that's my brother. And, of course, she directs me right to Bill McKelvey's place. So traveling around Idaho in 1976 and 1977, we covered about 10,000 miles. We met literally hundreds and hundreds of people. We created 2 magazines. And we learned a little bit about what life in small towns is. And I'll give you 2 threads that I think still are part of the skein of small town life. One is people take care of each other. You won't get stuck in a ditch in small town Idaho without somebody pulling you out. And they will rise to an occasion. When I was in St. Mary's, they talked about, now this is a mill town. There are 3 working mills in St. Mary's. People have jobs. What they cannot get, and this is the same in Preston, is a motel. Now, what else happens in small town Idaho is it is, of course, small town as the adjective. So I met, for example, in Oakley with the city manager. And here's another moment in small towns. I walk in, I said, look, could I interview you sometime? I'm in town, and I really am doing this book on small towns. Could we talk sometime? She says, what about right now? I said, now is perfect. So she talked about how enjoyable her life was, that, you know, there's a business, Oakley Stone is in Oakley. But she said, here's the downside. Everybody knows your business in a small town. So traveling back this past year, one of the most fascinating towns then, this year and 40 years ago, was Elk River, Idaho. Now, those of you who went to the University of Idaho, Elk River is that town you went to party in 30 miles to the east. There's no sheriff in Elk River. Now there's no school, there was then. Now there's no mill, there was then. Maybe there are 80, maybe 100 people in Elk River. It depends who you ask. So I had set up an appointment with the woman at the Elk River Lodge, and I show up, and she had totally forgot. Now, you know, I'm there, Elk River, it's tiny, you make do. So as I'm meeting where the people are having breakfast, they're walking in and out, I interview whoever is there. Well, one old guy said he's born like 86 years ago in Elk River. He has 7.5 fingers. He's been a logger his whole life. And he says, you know what we are concerned about here in Elk River? I said, what? He said, wolves. They have changed the behavior of the elks. They don't bugle as much. They're aware of the wolves all the time. And another guy then chimes in who hasn't said a word. He said, you know, I was on my tractor, and we were surrounded by wolves. I was surrounded by wolves, and I was really frightened, and they really are just frightening, scary animals. No, they're wolves. Now, there's another old boy who's been sitting around. He's got a long white beard, for 50 years worked in the forest. He looks up at me and said, you know, I don't buy that. I think the wolves aren't doing anybody any harm. But I do have one idea. I said, what's that? He said, let's teach those wolves to eat Californians. When I started writing about and working on small towns in Idaho, it was in the 1970s, and there was a famous bumper sticker. Maybe some of you remember it. Idaho is what America was. And I will say that lots has changed, and in Boise, we are no longer what America was. We are a modern, contemporary city with all the pluses and the minuses. But if you're in Lava Hot Springs, if you're in Idaho City, if you're in Murray, Idaho, you still are what America was. Thank you very much.
All right. Watch out, Bill. There are wolves out there. Wolves. They're actually in the lobby during our intermission break. You can find copies of Idaho Traveler, which is the book that has just come out, I think maybe only a couple of weeks ago. Is that right? Was it launched just a couple of weeks? Brand new book. Are you available to, oh, sorry, I don't want to interrupt your conversation.
I was just saying it's number 3 on the rediscovered book list.
Oh, number 3 on the rediscovered book list this week. Thank you, Stitch.
You're welcome.
Will you be signing? Are you available to sign, or should I?
Please sign any book anybody wants to.
Any book. All right. I hear there's a telephone books. I hear there's a giant copy of Whose Boat Is This Boat that just got delivered. If you can sign your name in big letters on that one. Also out in the lobby, we do have Andrea Pettit, and there is a raffle set up you can sign up for, and at the top of the next act, we will be giving away one of those local pieces of art to a winner from that raffle, so feel free to do that. We have drinks available in the back here and also in the lobby. We'll see you back here in about 10, 12 minutes for the next act. On the flip side. I was told that's a phrase from the 70s. See you on the flip side. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the second act of Story Night, the 70s. You heard me talk about her earlier. Well, here she is in person, Andrea Pettit, and we are going to do the drawing. Looks like a lot of people filled out some pieces of paper.
Very exciting. Okay.
We have some artwork here, sure. This is artwork by Karen Jacobson. Sorry, I was just reading the back here.
Yes,
It has her bio and everything on it.
Yeah.
A member of the Plein Air Painters of Idaho, Idaho Watercolor Society, Guild of Natural Science Illustrators, and it is it's of a alley in the north end of Boise,
Yeah, it is.
where you grew up.
Where I grew up, riding my little bike around in the 70s.
Ah, we're so on theme. Okay. Oh, you have the name.
I have the name.
All right.
Okay. And congratulations to Ruth Wagner. Or Wagner. I don't know.
Ruth, you won.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. All right. If I can get my oh, we got a little Lotsie going on here. Now, pretty soon, Andrea's going to cross around the front this way, and then Ruth will go that way. It's going to be so much fun. Oh. We are live streaming this tonight again on YouTube, so I'm going to say hi to our one watcher, who I believe is my niece in. Hi, Natalia. Actually, my cousin might be watching too. Hi, Diane. She's watching later. Get well soon. Let's get our featured storytellers back up into these little gumdrop seats for our next act. And actually, there's an interesting connection. You'll have to excuse Alan. Apparently, he's still out signing books. We'll see when he joins us. There's actually an interesting connection between Alan and Stitch because that 501c3 that he mentioned that they had for the magazine, they decided to go commercial, from what I understand, and didn't need that 501c3. Oh, here he is, fashionably late. They decided they were going to go commercial and they weren't going to use that 501c3, so they transferred it to this group of people who had this crazy idea to have theater in Boise, live theater. Who they wanted to start a nonprofit. They found a hole in the city somewhere where they would allow them to have actors, and that eventually grew into the Idaho Shakespeare Festival. Stitch Marker was there during that time, and he's also participated in Story Night before. As I mentioned, he was an actor in our mini musical that we did here in our April show. He's also been a storyteller for our Starry Story Night a few years ago as well. And since that time in the 70s with that startup, he's been in countless productions at the Idaho Shakespeare Festival, as well as other companies around, and you can hear his voice on the television every now and then too. Hawking overalls or something, I can't remember what it is. Tools, garden, farm, and what? Hunting, I don't know. It's nothing I'm interested in. Do they? Please welcome to our stage, Stitch Marker.
Once upon a time, long, long ago in the early 70s, there was a group of very eager BSU theater arts students. We were known as the Unquenchables because we could not get enough theater. We were just obsessed with learning and making theater, and we all shared this common dream. We dreamed of a time that maybe one day we would be able to work in professional theater without leaving Boise, Idaho. And yeah, it was a bold idea, and I was, well, don't get me wrong, I was by far the most neurotic, wimpy, and spineless unquenchable, no doubt about that. But all the other unquenchables sort of propped me up through the 70s, and there was Danny Peterson and Victoria Holloway and Ginger Scott, and about a half dozen others that I can think of that later on in the decade, in 1977, became founding members of the Idaho Shakespeare Festival. But up to that point, being an actor in Boise was about 85% heavy lifting and no pay. And we loved it! Oh, we couldn't get enough. Oh, if you couldn't find us over here at the BSU Sioux Ball Theater, then look at Boise Little Theater. And if not there, we were probably at the Free Theater, Theatre Libre. And, and about, well, and our friends, Randy and Andrea, kind of broke off from BSU to start their own thing, Theater in a Trunk. That was in late 73, early 74, in this old warehouse on 16th and Bannock. And it was leased to them for $1 a year by dear Pam Boss. And inside this building, it was all like really aged wood. It was, wonderfully slightly bleached aged wood, and ceilings, floors, the bare studded walls, big, huge, rough-hewn columns, and all the unquenchables at BSU were going to climb on board to this thing. Wow, here we go. And with virtually no money and a lot of sweat, we transformed that warehouse into a workable 50-seat theater. And we were about 2 weeks out from opening our first show, and in comes the fire marshal, takes one look at all that wood, and says, "You're going to have to sheetrock this entire interior of this warehouse before you can let people in." Well, we were just stunned standing there, and he left, and who do you suppose was the first unquenchable to blurt out, "Well, that's it, we're done, it's over"? Yeah. The wimpy, spineless, neurotic one. Yeah. And all these unquenchables just turn and look at me, and my best friend, Danny Peterson, turned to me and he said, it wasn't for the first time or the last, and he was never mean about it. He said, come on, Stitch, grow a pair. And sure enough, we got our good friend Dale Asplund in, and he gave us a crash course on sheetrocking, and he got the sheetrock somewhere. I don't know, some wheeling, dealing. I hope it wasn't stealing. But, it was mad flurry for 2 weeks as hammers and saws and all-nighters. And we're doing rehearsals. We're shouting lines at each other over the constant noise. And white sheetrock dust everywhere. And when that dust settled, we opened that show, and it was a success. And though Theater in a Trunk never did make anybody any money, ever, we were really proud of it because we kept that theater going for, a good handful of years. And we were producing some really always compelling and usually audience-pleasing theater. And it was also a great training ground for those for the actors who did the early years of the Idaho Shakespeare Festival. We all sort of taught each other making something out of nothing theater, which is my favorite kind. And then in dry mouth, it's nervous. There are a lot of you out there. Oh, that's better. In 1975, BSU was doing a production of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it was the hot ticket. All the Unquenchables wanted in on it. There was a guest director, Larry West, and a guest actor, Doug Copsey. And we all got in on this, and it was the A-team. A lot of heavy hitters in that one. We had Michael Hoffman joined us at that point in time. And you know the story of Cuckoo's Nest, basically, right? You have Nurse Ratched, played by Victoria Holloway, and she has all this influence over the Bull Goose Loonies, which was all of us. And then you got this new guy who comes into town, McMurphy, and he was played by Doug Copsey, and he kind of instills the Bull Goose Loonies with all this confidence and, you know, instills us with the ability to have big ideas and so forth, and we'd follow him anywhere, and we did. And it was sort of life imitating art, because 2 years down the road, Victoria became the first artistic director of the festival, and Copsey became the founding producing director of the festival. And and side note, I did indeed play the most neurotic, wimpy, and spineless Bull Goose Looney. No. And Michael Hoffman, who played another Bull Goose Looney, Cheswick, he had said that he thought that even though the festival started in 1977, 2 years down the road, he really felt like it sort of began there. And we all had that feeling. A year down the line, 1976, we got the band back together at Theater in a Trunk to do The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, and Sue Galligan came on board. And by then, Victoria was just saying, you know, what we do is valuable. We've got to get started. We need to start getting paid for this. And, well, yeah, that's a good idea. At any rate, so all these big ideas were flying around. We had to get out of that 50-seat theater in order for that to happen. And so we were talking about maybe doing the musical Hair. But this was the 70s, and the royalties were through the roof, so that was out. And somebody just popped off, well, what about Shakespeare? He's free. Well... And the seed was planted, and then life happened, and we all had day jobs all the way through the 70s. We had day jobs. Some of us were still in school and families and so forth. And here's the wimpy, neurotic part of me. I'm thinking, oh, this isn't going to happen. It's too big an idea. It'll never happen. You know, and on it goes. And then the biggest regret of the 70s for me, it's 1977, and my friend Doug Copsey comes up and offers me a good role in A Midsummer Night's Dream, which was going to be the first production of Idaho Shakespeare Festival, produced right down here? Yeah, down 9th Street, just a couple of blocks, at number 1 Capitol Center there on 9th and Main, you know, where that sort of grassy amphitheater thing is, and down there's the restaurant patio, cement patio, and those magnificent cement staircases coming down either side. And it broke my heart. I had to turn him down because I had committed to do this dumb dinner theater thing that never went anywhere, and it was too late to get out of it. But the good news was that that was going to end before Midsummer Night's Dream opened. So I was able to jump all over the set crew and the build the fence around the amphitheater crew and the, help wrestle those heavy potted, really tall trees that Sterling Landscape had generously loaned us, wrestle those down the cement staircase onto the patio so we could make the Enchanted Forest crew and the Water the Trees at Night crew and the guard the barricades on 9th and Main from traffic for noise purposes so the pissed off teenagers didn't come and move them and go crashing through to Cruise Main. Really, honestly, I think about it, I don't really have many regrets about that because I got to be there every night, be sort of part of watching my friends and colleagues create absolute magic. And the audiences every night just kept getting bigger and bigger. And that was 77. and 78, we did Two Gentlemen of Verona, and the audiences were just pouring in. And then the year after that, 79, we did Romeo and Juliet, Merry Wives of Windsor. We added a show. And, in the next year it was 3 Shakespeare productions. So it was really a going thing. And I'm convinced to this day that, I think people expected to see good theater when they came, granted, but I don't think they expected to see quite the clear storytelling and the innovative acting choices, bold acting choices, and the outrageous humor, and the tight ensemble work that came out of a group of people working together on and off throughout the 70s, teaching each other how to make something out of nothing theater. And I am grateful to this day to all those unquenchables who did not give up on the dream and made a theater where I was able to, realize the dream. I was able to do 30 seasons on and off of Idaho Shakespeare and, many off-season shows, indoor shows, and directed the Apprentice program for 7 summers, and entertained and educated hundreds of thousands of students all over Idaho and the western states in the ISF's outreach programs, Shakespeareans and Idaho Theater for Youth. And, we lost a few of those wonderful unquenchables, Danny Peterson and Sue Galligan and John Elliott, and God love them. They were unquenchable right to the last. So anyway, Godspeed, tip your server. Thanks.
The saddest thing about that story is I saw Stitch reach for that water bottle, and I thought, you're unquenchable.
That was good. That was like a pun. So it's unquenchable because it's water.
Is that what it was like to be with you on stage, Stitch?
You have no idea.
I told you what connected Alan and Stitch here. Actually, Stitch and I are connected a little bit right now, too, because he opened the season at Alley Repertory Theater just a few weeks ago with Bernhardt Hamlet. And I am in rehearsal right now for La Cage aux Folles, which is opening this weekend. It's never been, as far as I know, it's never been produced in Boise, so this is the first time. And we're actually in rehearsal tonight. I have somebody standing in for me in the queue to queue. I wonder how that's going. I was feeling kind of butch tonight.
Oh, sorry.
And somebody told me I looked like Charles Nelson Riley. Not exactly what, but I am playing Georges in La Cage aux Folles, and he is described as a person who his mannerisms can be translated as tasteful affectation. And I think Charles and I I don't know. Anyway. We're gonna do some slammer stories now. So remember, 5 minutes on the theme 70s. Here comes our slammer box. And I understand we do have some, we won't have to rise up out of the audience spontaneously, because we have some tickets in here with people's names. And our first slammer is going to be number 658619. It's not how we do this, is it? No. It's Randy R. Randy R. Here he comes. Woo!
Yeah. 70s were fun. I grew up in Chicago, suburbs, in a town called North Lake, which was nowhere near a lake. And it was on the west, but still, we had plenty of stuff to do. I did most of my traveling via hitchhiking, and did it for almost 20 years through, like from 65 until almost 85 or 90, when I finally moved out here and got a job. But, I mean, because I didn't have a car that whole time. And I got around quite a bit. And some of the, what? Talk into the mic? Okay. Some of the best stories, actually, are kind of scary, but still, I'm here, and everything's cool. Being dragged off to a reservoir somewhere and being talked to like I was going to end up in the pool, or having John Wayne Gacy pull up alongside of me, I swear. But I didn't get in his car, so I'm still here. And besides, I was kind of afraid of clowns, and that just didn't do much for me. But hey, that was healthy. But I think the worst of it, I traveled to work, which was as a caddy for almost 15 or 20 years. Well, I worked at a country club for 20 years, 15 of it as a caddy, and caddied in the U.S. Open, Western Open, many of the major golf tournaments in the Chicago area, in addition to just going out and hanging out with the members every day during the summer. And that kind of gave me the opportunity, but I would travel that 20-mile stretch just with my thumb out. And I think the weirdest moment, though, was I was coming home from a day, it was mid-afternoon, on a day a lot like yesterday, and this is kind of what brought it up, that the wind and my route could vary depending on where the people who would pick me up were going. And this guy came tooling down Lake Street, North Lake Street. Came tooling down Lake Street out at the club, and I had finished a full day out there on a BMW Triumph Bonneville, I'm sorry. It wasn't a BMW. Triumph Bonneville motorcycle. It was clean, very little on it, no back bar, no sissies in those days. And basically got on the back, and I told him where I was going, and he said, cool, I'll get you right there. And I got on back and just kind of grabbed the back of the seat. There's no strap. I'm not going to grab him around the waist, I'm sorry, not that kind of guy, but grabbed the back of the seat. And it was a windy day, as I said. And so we hopped up onto the expressway, which is a nice, easy way to get home. It's still about a 20, 25-minute ride. But we got up onto the expressway, and it's wide open road, 3 lanes here in one direction, and 3 lanes there in another direction, with no shelter. And the bike is moving 4 feet at a time, sideways, in addition to him doing 70 miles an hour. And I was just kind of gathered. It's all you can do. You grab the seat, and as the ride progressed, I kept getting further and further back on the seat I was actually falling off. So he gets down off the expressway, and I'm not real stressed out right now, but trust me, that was a moment. Probably the worst moment in my life, because I really wasn't sure if I'd be able to hang on much longer. Because all you got is your fingers at that point. And I'm here now. Oops. I'm sitting here on my knees, and the rest of me is off the back of the bike. So it's kind of tense. And he gets me down off the expressway onto North Avenue and pulls up about a quarter mile away from my house, where I'd walk the rest of the way. And he pulls over and said, "Here you go." And I said, "Really appreciate the ride. But if you ever see me again, just keep going."
Thank you. Well, we are in the 70s right now, and I don't know if anyone does this anyway. It makes Story Night memes. I hear this is the thing of today, but I think this is a good candidate, and it should be "All you got are your fingers." Hashtag Story Night. And then people can just figure it out. All you got are your fingers. Story Night. 7.5 fingers. It's the opposite of tree rings. The fewer fingers you have, you know how much older you are. All right, we're going to bring another slammer up who's going to talk about their fingers. No, you don't have to talk about your fingers. Although, yeah. Our next slammer will be... Really? Apparently she didn't get enough stage time earlier. It's our former board president, Amy Moran, and this might be the first time she has ever told a story at Story Night. It may be. Is it?
Yes, this is the first time. I've been terrified until now. I'm still a little nervous, but felt like the right time to do it. So I have a little love note to share with you to my mother. So I'm going to do a little winding through some decades, and I'll take you to the 70s, but not initially. I'm going to start in my first decade. An experience that I had waking up in the morning, realizing that something had shifted, going into my parents' room and saying, "Something's happening and I'm not sure what it is." And my mom saying, "Oh, honey, you're becoming a woman is what's happening." And she said, "This is a delightful day and we're going to celebrate." She said, "You're not going to school today. I'm going to take you shopping, and we're going to go out for lunch, and we're going to get you the supplies that we need, and we're going to celebrate all day long, because this is a big day for you." And she made the day so wonderful and so positive, and I felt so good about it, and she built so much confidence into it that the next day when I went to school with my little packet of supplies, and I was 9 years old, my little packet of supplies, I had a little group of elementary school girls who wanted to follow me to the restroom at my first break to find out what this was all about. So I got to share the confidence and the enthusiasm and the celebration with them that my mother had shared with me. And then I fast forward into my third decade, and I called my mom and dad to say, "I'm getting married." And my mom said, "Well, he's not the one I would have wanted." but I'm happy for you nonetheless. And we love you, and we're there for you. So for my mom, what that means is she'll do all the flowers for the wedding, she'll sew all of the table linens, and she'll cater it herself. So I had about 75 or 80 people there for the event, and she did all of it with nothing but love, nothing but tenderness, nothing but support, even though it really wasn't the decision that she wanted me to make. And as I got older and moved away from my family, the ways that I stayed connected with my mom, which was tenderly and closely, was via telephone. And my mom was always the first one who I would call with my news of heartbreak, and she was the first one who I would call with my news of celebration. She was the first one I would go to, the one I always knew that I could count on. And I treasured those phone calls, and she was always there for me, unconditionally. And it was usually, I was greeted with oh, hello, my little honey, lotus blossom, darling, beautiful girl, or something along those lines, just something beautiful and tender. And then we fast forward. My mom is now in her 70s, so we arrive in our 70s, in her 70s. And our phone calls have started to become a little bit different. So the phone call now starts with something along the lines of, well, honey, do you make smoothies? Well, yes, Mom, I do make smoothies. Well, you like smoothies? Well, yes, Mom, I do like smoothies. She said, well, now how do you make those? Do you have to have a special kind of blender to make those? I said, well, I have a Vitamix. And she said, well, could you use any kind of blender? And I said, well, yeah, you could, but I just prefer the Vitamix. She says, well, do you like frozen bananas? Yes, Mom, I like frozen bananas. I slice them up and I put them in the freezer. She said, well, so do you like blueberries? Yes, Mom, I like blueberries. And so we kind of talk through the ingredients that I would put in a smoothie. Then we move on briefly to another topic, usually related to weather or the book that she's reading. Then about mid-conversation, well, so honey, do you like to make smoothies? Yeah, Mom, I do like to make smoothies. Well, what kind of blender do you need to use to make smoothies? And I said, well, I use a Vitamix to make my smoothies. She says, well, can you use any kind of blender that you'd like? Well, yeah, Mom, you could use any kind of blender. It'd be okay. Do you like frozen bananas in your smoothies? Yeah, Mom, I do like frozen bananas in my smoothies. So we move through the smoothie conversation again, and then we move back to some mention of the weather, some mention of the day, and then toward the end of the conversation again. So, honey, do you like smoothies? Yeah, Mom, I do. I like smoothies. And tell me about the blenders that you use for your smoothies. Well, I use a Vitamix, Mom, for my smoothies. So you kind of get the flow of the conversations that we have now. And that's the relationship that I have now with my mom in her 70s. Well, I shouldn't say that's the relationship. That doesn't define the relationship, but that's the space that we have moved into. So I no longer call my mom with my most celebratory news or my heartbreaking news because she can't really go there anymore. She doesn't understand how to have conversations about those topics with me anymore. And I'm making those adjustments, and I'm mourning the conversations that I would have with her before now. And I'm mourning those aspects of our relationship, but I'm finding a tenderness and a sweetness for her that I haven't felt previously. There's a little bit of a playfulness to these conversations about blenders and bananas and blueberries. And in her 70s, she is still the most important person in my world in a different way. And no less loving and no less supportive and no less wonderful, just different. And so that's just a little love note to my mom in her 70s.
Oh. Wonder what she had to say. I went to my mom one morning. I wasn't sure what was going on. She said, "Jody, you shaved off your mustache." But there was no celebration. There was no lunch. I didn't get to stay home from school. Nothing. I've grown it back here. A little bit. This was my 70s look. I thought, oh. Let's do another slammer. This is fun. One person is going to enjoy this next story. Either that or they know that there are the only name left in the... No, there's several in there, aren't there? Wow. Good job, guys. All right. This is not a new person to the Story Night stage, although they may be new to slamming. I'm not sure. Please welcome Sherry Briscoe. Don't do that with the microphone. Okay. I probably got in trouble. There you go.
Thank you. Yes, I was here last year for the Starry Story Night, and that was a wonderful experience. But let me tell you about the 70s for me. I grew up here in Idaho. I was born and raised here in Boise. I'd lived my whole life here. We didn't travel anywhere. My family didn't go on vacations. If we went anywhere, we went on a camping trip up in the hills, or we went on a picnic. We went to the drive-in movie, but we didn't travel. So by the time I graduated from high school, I didn't know what it was like beyond the borders of Idaho. I went to BSU my first year, which was actually Boise State College at that time. And in the middle of that year, in January of 1974, it became Boise State University. And I was there. But that summer of 1974, I walked around town and I thought, I don't want to go back to school. I like school, but I want to travel. I want to see what's out there in the world. It's the 70s. There's got to be more than Idaho, right? So this was a funny time of the year. It was the end of Vietnam. So Vietnam was still going on, but it was winding down. And there were posters all over town, on every block, in every shop window. Join the Army. Be all you can be. And I thought, I don't even know what I can be. Me? You know, this little shy, introverted girl from Idaho. But I really wanted to travel, and I wanted to go to Europe. So I went into the recruiting office and I asked them, I said, so what do you have? Right? What can you give me? Well, the Air Force was great. They had almost a year's waiting period, though. And the Navy had some good programs, and again, almost a year waiting period. And I'll tell you something about me. I'm really impatient. If I want to do something, I want to do it now, right? Now's the time I want to travel. Now's the time when you need to send me somewhere. So I went into the Army recruiting. They had a guarantee of station. I was like, oh my gosh. I said, can you guarantee me that I'll be stationed in Europe? And they said, yeah. I said, all right, let's do it. They said, sign right here. And I did. And 30 days later, I was on my first plane out of Idaho. I didn't go straight to Europe. You know, the Army has this funny thing where you have to go to basic training first. So they sent me to South Carolina. get on the plane, I go to South Carolina, 1974, October. It was a good time to be in South Carolina, though. Arrive in the airport, they have an old bus that picks all of us up to take us to Fort Jackson. A funny thing happened on the way to the base. We're tooling down the highway, and I'm looking out at this beautiful countryside of South Carolina, and there's this huge billboard, and it says, "Welcome to South Carolina, home of the Fighting Cocks." I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? I had no idea. South Carolina was a little bit different than Boise in 1974. You know, they had a dance down there called the bump. Have you ever heard of it? I hadn't heard of it. We go out to the nightclubs when we get off on the weekends, and there was this big guy who had a crush on me. Now, when I joined the Army, I barely made the weight minimum. I was like 98 pounds. And if you know how the bump went, so this guy who weighed about 300 was buying me all these drinks, like, yeah, I'm gonna. Then he asked me to dance. Okay, he wanted to do the bump. Really? You hit me with your hips once and I go flying out the door. I could see that one coming. No. So I kind of, I can't, I don't know how to dance that. I can't do that. He got kind of mad at me and he called me a name. Well, remember, he'd been buying me drinks all night. So I was a little tipsy. At 98 pounds, I get drunk pretty fast. And I swung off and hit him. I kind of got in trouble for that one. But I didn't have to dance the bump, and I didn't have to go flying out the door. It was a great experience. I ended up going to Germany, and I was stationed in Nuremberg for 2 years, where I traveled throughout Germany, France, Holland, and Austria, and it was an amazing time. So the 70s were wonderful to me. Thank you.
Good to see you. It's a poster. I remember these right over there. Well, I can see how you would wonder what else is there, having never left Boise in the 70s. But, it goes the other way, too. I was in somewhere in Florida. What's a famous place in Florida? Not Miami. North. I was in one of those places, and this woman said, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Boise. And she said, well, what country is that in? So we don't know if there's anything else outside of Boise, and they don't know that Boise is here. So it all worked out. Let's do one more. How about tonight? One more slammer for the 70s. Yes. Contain your enthusiasm, please. Thank you, Kelly. Our last story slammer, and then I have a little song I'll share with you afterwards. All right, it's another story night slammer of the year contestant. He's had his story turned into a musical before. A regular slammer on our stage, Mr. Dave Lee. Hey, Dave. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Good evening. As tends to happen at these things, I once again wasn't really planning on telling a story tonight till I started hearing the other stories, and it inspired me, brought back some memories. Even so, until Randy spoke, I thought my story might be the only hitchhiking story tonight, but it was the 70s and hitchhiking was a thing. And tonight's story reminded me of a trip I took in 1977. I was a freshman in college at University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. and I was going to hitchhike down to St. Petersburg, Florida, where a friend of mine had just moved and spent spring break down there. And I think my first night I got as far as St. Louis, stayed with some friends there, and the second night I got somewhere near Nashville, Tennessee, and it got dark by then, and I decided it was time to just call it a night, and I camped out somewhere in or around the Cloverleaf there, and woke up the next morning. When I say I was somewhere near Nashville, I mean I wasn't in a big city, and I was at one of those places where I was at an interchange in the road, and pretty much the only thing there was, I think, one gas station. And so when I got up in the morning, you get up early when you're camping out on a freeway, and it was had been kind of cold, and I sort of rolled up my sleeping bag and stuff and decided to walk over to this gas station, maybe warm up a little bit, use the restroom, and maybe get a snack. And I got there was one person in the gas station, which wasn't unusual. It was a small place, except this person didn't really look like your typical gas station attendant. It was an older lady, probably somebody about the age of my mother, kind of, I don't know, I don't mean this directly, somebody you might kind of describe as a blue hair, and somebody I wasn't expecting to see in a place like that, but nonetheless, I started chatting with her, and she was chatting with me, and I was describing how I'd slept out the night before, and I was hitchhiking, and she asked me, well, where are you going? And I said, oh, Florida. And then she says, well, do you have good references? And I'm like, well, yeah, I think so. I'm a trustworthy guy. And she goes, well, I'm going to Florida. And I'm like, well, are you offering me a ride? Well, yeah, I guess so. I'm like, oh, good, that would be great. I soon found out kind of why she was there and also why she was eager to pick up a rider. As it turned out, the reason she was there at the gas station is she was waiting for a tow truck. She had been driving down the freeway, and apparently at some point she had slowed down to look at the road signs, and a truck came up behind her and laid on the horn and scared her, and she ran off into the median. So as you might imagine, she probably could have used a relief driver for a little while. So anyhow, I joined, and she was like a retiree from Michigan or someplace heading down to Florida to check on her winter condo. Anyhow, it was a long ride from Nashville to St. Petersburg, but she got by the way, this was March of 1977, just 2 months before Jimmy Carter had been inaugurated president. And this lady thought it would be kind of interesting on her way down to Florida. Why don't we detour through Plains, Georgia? And I thought, okay, sure, why not? I'm on vacation. And Plains, Georgia, well, so we got off the main road and we were on this little country road going past some fields and just a typical country road. And I think we passed the sign that said approaching Plains, Georgia, or Plains, Georgia city limit. And like right at about that point, there's a side road that joins the main road we were on. And as we get there, I see this tram-like thing, like they have at Disneyland to bring you in from the parking lot. Only this tram on the front car, they had like a cardboard cutout of a giant peanut. And it said something on it like the Peanut Express. And believe it or not, that was a tour car that was taking tourists around to see the sights of Plains, Georgia. And believe it or not, that was not the only tour. When you got into town, there was a variety of outfits offering tours like that. Not only that, there were all sorts of places selling Jimmy Carter souvenirs. I remember getting a huge bag of on-roasted peanuts that I took home because I thought, these would be neat souvenirs. Hey, you want some peanuts from Plains, Georgia? Another souvenir I got, I think I still have, I don't have the peanuts anymore, but I think I still have this. I don't know where it is. But I had a postcard with a picture of Billy Carter's gas station. I think I still have that, and when I find that, I'm going to put it somewhere in a prominent place and display in my home. But anyhow, Plains, Georgia was certainly proud of their hometown boy at that time. But anyway, It's been a long time since then, and I don't imagine Plains, Georgia is a tourist trap anymore. But how about that Jimmy Carter? He's 95 years old, he's beat brain cancer, he's beat a couple of falls, and he's still making houses for poor people. So, you know, whatever you could say about the 70s, whatever you could say about Jimmy Carter, I don't know. This is an apolitical zone, but couldn't we use more Jimmy Carters these days?
Thank you for the support from the Boise Arts and History Department. This program is also supported in part by the Idaho Commission on the Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. Thank you to our media sponsors, Boise State Public Radio and Radio Boise. We also have a radio show. It's Story Night on Stray Theater, which you can hear the Sunday before our live show from 5:30 to 6 on Radio Boise. And of course, you can always listen to our podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, or however you listen to podcasts. The link is on our website. Thank you to our crew, Stephen Baldessari on Sound and Lights, our photographer, Chelsea Harada. Look for her photos and tag yourself on our Facebook page in just a few days. We have a Story Studio coming up here at Jump on December 7th. You can sign up for that on Eventbrite to help you get ready to tell Slam. And then you can go to Slam Night on December 10th at the Gem Center for the Arts. No featured storytellers, just Slam, hosted by Jen Adams there. Thank you to our volunteers, our volunteer coordinator, Stephanie Moore, and to our board of directors. Thank you to our studio coordinator, Matthew Melton. Thank you to all our storytellers. Thank you to Jump In. Thank you to the Boise State Costume Department for my groovy outfit this evening. Oh, and one more thing that I would like to share with you before we leave tonight, which has become a little bit of my Carol Burnett tradition. Story night. Story, good night. Beginning, middle, now at the end. Authentic, inspiring, spontaneous. Right, Bill? Spontaneous? So thank you. You shared your stories and you really listened. I may have come here as a stranger, but now I'm leaving as a friend. And so the stories never end. See you on December 26th for the 80s. Happy Thanksgiving and good night.